and get started. Really with just kind of more of an open discussion kind of thing for this meeting, though put out agenda so that we have specific things that we're trying to get to, so we're not just kind of talking in a circle. But our second meeting this summer, with the last one being May 31st. And this time around, kind of go back through and, of course, make sure we know who all's on the call and go through introductions, and then check on where we are with IRB, any challenges or progress that anyone's run into since last month. And then follow up on kind of the sampling methods that we talked about last month, if anybody's had an opportunity to do any attempts of looking at how possible it's going to be to collect samples that meet those parameters. And those are kind of the follow-ups from last month. And then a new item for this month is what calling at the moment institutional profiles. And so if we just kind of want to go through, I guess in the order that's on screen, this is based on the names that we had from last month and stuff. I added the additional names from each institution and stuff. So from San Jacinto College, there's myself, Chris Duke, and then Mary Wisgerda, I don't know if she was able to join the call today, is the department chair for biology at our South Campus that has also done an a certain amount of work with us on general education. She presented with us, with our office, at the Texas A&M Assessment Conference in 2015. And so she is our faculty lead on this project. And so if we just want to go down the list and see who all's on the call.
Okay, this is Larry King from Stephen F. Austin State University.
I'm Sharon Bailey. I'm at the University of Houston, Victoria, and I'm the assessment leader.
And I don't think Jean was able to join us. She had mentioned before that she was traveling some this summer.
Is it our turn?
I think so, yes.
Lorraine Phillips, the University of Texas at Arlington. I serve in the Office of Institutional Effectiveness.
And Melissa Brown, I also serve in the Office of Institutional Effectiveness with Dr. Lorraine Phillips.
And Julie Gray here as well.
And then I misspoke earlier. I said Wharton and should have said Weatherford. I was in the right part of the alphabet, apparently. Are Sarah or Charles able to call in? I see one that looks like one or the other of them.
This is Lee Butler. I'm listed as Charles on the thing, but I go by Lee, so okay. My computer picked up on that.
Okay, and then Sarah, make it in. I knew she had another commitment that she was trying to make it to this meeting. So. Okay. Well, last month at the end of May, we talked more about the institutional approval of IRB, and we were at various stages of progress on kind of walking through those local institutional approval and IRB. So really for this month, just to follow up on that, if there's any questions or concerns or discussion or anything, any assistance that Larry and I could provide or need to provide in order to kind of help out in any regard. So just kind of open discussions. Anybody have any questions or just kind of updates in general on where you are with that step in the process?
So Chris, here at UT Arlington, we've submitted our IRB protocol to our IRB committee. They meet in July, so should a full protocol review be necessary, our materials are there for them to review. Hopefully, though, as it's an exempt submission, the IRB chair may have to leeway to just review it and grant approval. So I anticipate within a month we'll know which way that goes. But all our documents are in, and the language that I used I'd be happy to share with others in terms of describing the protocol and all the different questions that a formal board might ask.
Okay, yeah, no, that would be fantastic. If you don't mind sharing that out, then I think just hitting kind of a reply to all on the reminder that the second reminder I sent out yesterday would accomplish that.
Has Jean Toms been in touch with you at all, Chris, related to her IRB?
She has not. I had, when we sent out the notice for the May 31st meeting, she had indicated that that she was going to be traveling. I got the impression, and I'm trying to remember, check my memory, she may have been working with a study abroad program, and so she may be quite busy.
Okay.
I don't know if that's accurate. That's what my memory's trying to jog.
Weatherford College assembled its documentation and submitted to our IRB for exempt status on the project, and we've collected most of the responses so far, and we're expecting to get notification of approval on that exempt status here pretty soon.
Outstanding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we should be able to, we should be able to get our IRB done in the next month or so.
yeah, at San Jack, we're kind of looking at the same thing. We've gotten everything together and have gotten it submitted since within the last 3 weeks, and it's just a matter of waiting for that group to meet to review it before we get the institutional approval. It sounds like everybody's kind of flying along. Larry, you had mentioned that at Stephen F. Austin, you were kind of waiting to find out whether or not you were going to have to submit or if it was just going to be approved as being exempt. Have you heard anything back on that one?
Not yet.
Not yet. No, I understand that holding pattern. That's kind of where we're at, is waiting on kind of the same question. Okay. Well, it sounds like with the institutional approval and the IRB, it sounds like everybody's in fantastic shape, and really it sounds like we've all gotten it out of our hands, and we're just waiting on the responses from our institutions more than anything else. So, okay. Any other thoughts or before we move along? Okay. All right, so again in May, we had kind of walked through the sampling parameters that we were working with, and we kind of polished those a little bit and clarified, especially that one in that, the fourth one in that list, in terms of clarifying, instead of saying from a course, we were specifying that we're talking about from a single section or single faculty member, so that we get a diverse number of sections and faculty within the sample. With the intent being that we don't end up with 75 or 100 documents all from the same faculty member from the same course, especially from maybe the universities that have courses that have very large numbers of students in them. So we clarified some of that, and then what we want to check on today is have you had any opportunities to look at how possible it's going to be to identify the students that meet these requirements, number one, and then number two, how possible it's going to be to collect documents specifically from those students.
This is Lee at Weatherford College. I've been looking at the parameters for this, and I think I've got a method where once we identify the courses we're going to be sampling from, I should be able to extract a student list from the data warehouse and then process it further with another script to, meet the requirements for no more than 10 to 15 from a single faculty and no more than one for a student. It's a multi-step process, so it'll take a little time to work out the details, but I don't see it as being insurmountable.
Okay. Yeah, and that's, I had explained last month that San Jacinto is participating in the multi-state collaborative. And so we've actually been through much of the same exact process, though we've got one parameter for what we're doing is a little bit different in that we're looking at 42 to 72 completed semester credit hours rather than what the MSC uses. But at San Jacinto, we've been through this entire process and know that we can do it, and we know approximately how much work it's going to take in order to accomplish it. So what about others? Maybe U of H Victoria, UT Arlington, Stephen F.?
It's going to be,
Go ahead, Sharon. I will. I'll go. Is it possible to remove the name, the word faculty, and just say from a single section?
No, absolutely. That's not a problem.
I think we're there then.
I mean, given, Chris, that we don't know the 42 to 72 completed hours,
Yep.
we were also going to change that to level, if I recall. It had to be sophomore or junior
Oh,
level.
that's right.
And that's an important clarification for us in particular, because we do not have access. As Lee was saying, you know, we can't query a table to say how many hours have they completed. We only get level, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and it's not by semester. It's literally level.
Chris, I think that that needs to go up where the 42 to 72 hours is.
Yes, I agree.
There? That better?
So sample drawn from students at the sophomore or junior level and take out 42 to 72.
Community colleges can work with that too, can't they, Chris?
Well,
I mean, I know they wouldn't have juniors, but basically you wouldn't have anybody that's a freshman at 42.
Right, and that's why I was going to say, or 42 to 72 semester credit hours.
Oh, okay. That gives everybody something to bite on then.
Right.
Okay.
And the most important thing is that it keeps us kind of all in the same ballpark of students that have similar lengths of academic experience, which is in contrast to saying if we put a percentage on it. Because if we say, like the MSc does, 75% complete to a degree, then we're comparing students at a community college that are 75% complete that have 45 semester credit hours versus students from universities that have 90 semester credit hours, that have, you know, twice the coursework completed. And so, I mean, if we're all pulling from, you know, sophomore or junior level, that's going to keep us at least somewhere in where all of those students are somewhere close, at least within the same 2-year span.
I think it's actually I think what we're doing is really growing on me, and in some ways I almost like it more than the alternative from the MSc.
Yeah, it is.
Not Texan.
In your previous deliberations, I'm sorry I wasn't able to make the previous webinar, but have y'all talked about the impact of dual credit on this process? Because we could very reasonably expect to have students step foot on our campus for the first time already having completed 30 to 40 hours of college coursework, but in their high school classes. And is that a consideration? Is that a problem? Considering that, well, they are students who are taking college classes but might lack the intellectual maturity that the other students they'd be compared against would have who started freshman year in a traditional manner.
Yeah, I see your point, Lee. AP or, you know, advanced placement courses might give them the credit hours to be leveled as a sophomore, but they haven't had the Weatherford College experience for enough time to say they have attained or derived a benefit that we can measure from their college experience. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yes, ma'am, it is. I just, it's one of the challenges that we're facing. We've got a whole cadre of students who are not as intellectually mature as students who completed high school and started their freshman year on the college campus. So there's a differential, and any professor who has taught dual credit might be able to speak better to this. I have not, so I'm not sure. But I just wanted to know, do we want to exclude dual credit students from this, especially those who are first time on campus in their sophomore semester or sophomore year?
Well, and I think that, and I think you can see what I was typing on screen. It would also may be true of at the university level, not necessarily including students that have transferred in. Because it's, and I mean, one of the things is that we're not necessarily looking at, how are students at that institution doing, but I know that we've had those same conversations locally, that, if they have 35 hours, but they transferred to us from another community college in the area, and when we're looking at this internally from an institutional effectiveness perspective, that's not really answering our question of how we're doing as an institution. So it could be that we do want to limit this to students, basically to our native students, rather than dual credit students or transfer students.
And Chris, I would raise a voice of dissent here from UT Arlington. That may be appropriate for a future study, but in our pilot here, I'd like to see us approach, student attainment rather than student attainment at our university per se. I mean, drilling down that specifically may be a mistake at this point.
I'll just add a couple of echoes to that. This is Lorraine. One, when it comes to SACS data, we are expected to include our transfer students in our assessments. So I intend to use this as part of how we argue our work with SACS, and so it would disappoint me if I wasn't able to do that just from an accreditation perspective. Secondly, over 50% of our students are transfer students, and we are the third largest intake of transfer students of any university in the nation, and so to eliminate the transfer students from our population would not be representing our population, actually, because we are a major transfer intake institution in the nation. And then thirdly, dual credit grows such that if we could eventually in this study learn to distinguish them, there's probably some very informative information that's laying beneath the surface that we could bring forward. But I don't think we're far enough along in the study to actually tackle it. But I completely agree that is one heck of an interesting thing to tackle one day.
Well,
at UHV we have the problem that our freshman class is not that large. We have around 300 freshmen, so by the time they're juniors or sophomores and juniors, when we take 100 samples, we're going to be getting a third of the students. We do get quite a few transfer students. So the question of whether we want, and that would give us a larger sample of students to draw from too, but I can't see us limiting it to one document from a student and then being able to meet that other criteria of no more than 10 to 15 students from a single section.
well,
This is Sarah Lott from Weatherford College. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was here earlier, but I was having trouble granting access to my microphone, so I just went ahead and called in separately. So I'm caller 1 on the users, the participants. I don't see either how we could exclude dual credit students. When they have the 42 to 72 hours, they may have earned a portion of those at dual credit, but they probably, most of them won't still be dual credit students, and I don't see how we could exclude those.
Yeah, I agree that we shouldn't exclude either the dual credit or the transfers, but I think we ought to tag them so that we can study deeper the impact that that experience has on the learning process.
Right, and that's going to be some of the stuff that Larry and I, as we start working with Matthew from Live Text, about looking at, how do we get demographic data uploaded with each of the assignments, so that we can dig a little bit deeper if we want to, knowing that we have to be careful to not disaggregate and to draw too many conclusions from that, because out of a sample of 400, we may have a very small number that are dual credit, or that were transfer students when you're talking about across all the institutions. But no, I would absolutely agree that we want to tag them. But it sounds like we don't necessarily want to exclude those folks. And then I would add philosophically at San Jac, when we've talked about this, is that it really doesn't matter where a student started or how they got to the point of being a sophomore and almost done, or having 60 hours completed and finishing a degree. It doesn't matter how they got there. The point is that whenever they cross that finish line, they're supposed to have and be able to demonstrate attainment of these outcomes and these core objectives. So one of the things that we'll try that working towards having, I'm hoping to have, though it depends on when in July, we have that meeting, but we'll work to have, I'll try to make sure that as Larry and I are working, that we try to get in advance of that meeting kind of a list of the demographic fields that we'll want to include, and I'll make sure that we include the dual credit type information, so that we at least know, as Lee, as you're talking, that we know which students were or are currently dual credit.
Well, we'd have to figure out too what that means. Again, this is Sarah. I mean, how many hours they have to be considered, largely a dual credit student if they're not currently, because most of them at that level aren't still going to be active dual credit students.
Yeah, and I don't think it's possible for not necessarily dual credit, but I mean, in order to have that many hours complete, they would actually have to be, I think, almost early college, high school type programs. And I don't see us necessarily limiting, and not, we would not be limiting and not selecting samples from those students. We'd be looking at that 42 to 72 completed semester credit hours. Okay, so yeah, I'll make a note of that we have that next month we'll look at some of those demographic fields that we want to include for things that we may want to look at. And certainly if you have any ideas on, Lee, like Lee had on making sure that we're, tagging some of these other things. I mean, obviously the kind of the core demographic things that I'll be able to catch, and we'll have those from the outset. But if there's, you think up front or thinking currently that there's some others that we may want to add that aren't kind of that normal group of core demographic data, then go ahead and reply to all on the email that I sent yesterday about this meeting, because that'll catch everybody that's in this meeting plus the others that weren't able to make it today. So any other thoughts on kind of the sampling methods and kind of continuing to work towards testing those? It sounds like we're starting to get our feet under us a little bit in terms of being able to get these samples that, we're kind of targeting. Okay, well, the first new thing that in the last item I had on the agenda is an institutional profile. And the idea is, and this would be something that would help us kind of contribute and start building out a little bit of the content. Yes?
Can we go back to the last slide?
Sure.
We have one more thing.
Okay.
Point 2, randomly selected student documents. We are sampling from selected courses, but not random.
In other words, we're really doing purposeful samples, not random samples. So
I would agree with that, because if I'm going to get 75 to 100, they're not going to be random. They're going to be just pretty much anybody we can get their hands on their assignments from.
They're criterion-based samples.
Exactly. But, you know, if we're going to take 1 in 3 students, then we're pretty much going to take everything we can get our hands on.
You don't have to use that term, Chris. Really.
But the point is that we don't have access to every core curriculum class and course on campus, so we target areas where we can sample from.
Okay.
It's not all of them produce signature assignments that are that meet the criteria or are tuned to the value rubrics.
So that would mean that randomly up at the in point 1 would probably need to go too. And just start with sample 400 documents.
Well, not necessarily, because we could do a sample of we could do a random sample of the documents we select.
Well, that's true too, because if we do end up with 8 institutions, we will have about 800 documents, and we would randomly sample 400 from those.
But is it really possible to have a random sample if the original samples weren't random?
It limits the randomness, but
I try to take issue with the use of the word random, because I think in experimental design it means something very specific that we're not adhering to.
right.
Do a random sample of a collection of documents.
Right. No, and I think it's that point's well taken, Lorraine, and I think that I think Larry's point. The main thing from that is that, you know, we will not necessarily be evaluating every document that we collect from every institution. And the idea there was to allow, you know, kind of that random sample so that each institution is kind of represented equally without trying to take on, you know, far too much work. Assessing 400 documents is plenty of work. Okay, was there anything else on testing sampling methods?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you for going back.
No worries. Okay, so the institutional profiles, the thought with this is when folks arrive at the LEAP Texas website and they're looking at, you know, some of the work being done, is that if those of us that are participating, some of us that are participating in the Texas Assessment Collaborative were to provide a really kind of a case study or description of how we are institutionally implementing the LEAP value-based assessment of the Texas core objectives. And it is modeled off of the AAC&U campus models and case studies that they have available. Is the AAC&U website up now? Can you see that? Or are you still seeing the presentation?
Yeah, we can see that website. It's excellent.
Okay. And so they have a specific template with questions and stuff that they have solicited before. And I've already spoken to Kate McConnell. And so the idea would be to describe and write our case studies very, you know, from the Texas perspective, which one of the things that we deal with that that other institutions outside of Texas aren't dealing with is how to marry the AAC&U kind of LEAP-based value rubrics with the Texas core objectives, which are mandated for our institutions. And so it creates unique things for us that other institutions outside of Texas don't face, and that is, well, social responsibility. How do you measure that, and which rubric are you using, given that there's, you know, it seems like there's about 43 different rubrics for social and personal responsibility. And then, you know, and how, which one do you select and how do you use it and stuff. So the thought would be that if there's some of the institutions that are participating in the assessment collaborative, then and we write it according to those templates on the AAC&U, then we could publish that at the LEAP Texas as part of this project. And so if we've got institutions from around the state that are referencing those materials, then they could get a picture of how San Jacinto or Stephen F. Austin or UT Arlington are implementing LEAP-based value assessment within the context of the Texas core objectives. But we could also get double value out of it, because in speaking with Kate McConnell, she absolutely welcomed our submission of additional case studies that they could publish out to their website as further examples of, you know, implementation of LEAP value-based assessment. And so these are the types of questions that they had in that original template, that the kinds of things that they're looking for in terms of, you know, what's the context, the institutional context, and which rubrics are you starting to work with? How are you using them? Who's using them? What data have you collected and what's happened with the data? Essentially, how is LEAP value-based assessment contributing to improve student success on our individual institutions? And then in the last couple of ideas are, last couple of questions start to look for innovations in the development and use of those LEAP value-based rubrics. And so I didn't know if there was any questions or thoughts, and you know, all of this will be available online. I can provide it. But the thought on some of us, not necessarily all of us, but contributing those institutional profiles that we can publish on the LEAP Texas website, in which you'll be able to then turn around and also submit to the AAC&U, or if you submit it to us and want it submitted to AAC&U, then I can forward that along to Kate for you as well. But any thoughts or questions about that idea?
I think that is so admirable. I'm really thrilled that you guys are moving in that direction, and that's going to really enhance the resources that will be provided to institutions who are working toward this goal to see immediate Texas examples. And I love that Kate is so receptive to submitting them for AAC&U publication too. I'm going to cross my fingers that that goes our way. And then my last question is, what would be the time frame in your mind, Chris?
They don't, to my knowledge, they don't have like a specific deadline. There's not like a call for proposals. It's, you know, I just checked to make sure that they were still accepting them. So to my knowledge, there's not a specific deadline. In terms, at least for AAC&U, in terms of us, for our purposes, I think having some of these available, maybe going into the fall or mid-fall would be very nice to have, because then we can start pointing folks to those as examples. And then at the absolute latest, though, definitely by the next LEAP forum, because that would be a fantastic spot and a resource to have to point those conference attendees to. So the short version of that, there's not a specific deadline, but there's certainly some points that are coming up at which it would be more useful to have them than not.
I wholeheartedly agree. Fall's a really good thing because we'll just get a lot more bang out of our buck if we can have them posted by the fall. And with Kate McConnell coming to the West Texas Assessment Conference in the fall in October, it would be a really good opportunity for outreach. Is anybody going to that?
I have not planned on to it, but I know it's like the third week of October, I think.
Yeah, I'm not going either, but I think we're going to be sending, well, Doyle Carter will be there, and I think we're sending Jennifer Edwards and, gosh, one other person. Oh, heck, I can't remember. But anyhow, we might want to try and prime them to do a little outreach to Kate on the subject. This is a great idea. I'm with you on the 30th.
Yeah, I was panicking on the 1st.
Yeah, I put the first. I'm like, no, that's too close to the beginning of the semester.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, there's not a specific hard deadline. It's not like it's a call for proposals, but there's definitely certain points during the year that it may be more useful. And if we have those, if we try to aim for that by September 30th, then that's in advance. And I didn't think about the West Texas A&M conference and perhaps Kate being there. That could, would definitely give her a resource to point to either on our website or the AAC&U website.
Right.
For the folks that attend that conference.
Right. She'll be their keynote, so it'd be awesome if she would point to this in her presentation.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to get, I've had a case study that I've been trying to write ours up, but I haven't gotten it finished, which means that as we make improvements and changes to our process, I've got to go back and revise it, and I keep getting myself caught in our own continuous improvement loop. And so I'm trying to get ours finished up, and as soon as I can get that done, then I'll try to get that posted and share to this group if it's helpful in kind of how we're approaching it at least. Okay, so the last item would be, before I get to next steps, just anything else for the good of the cause? Questions, ideas, suggestions, concerns, anything?
I think this has been super helpful, Chris, and the way these ideas are starting to converge is exciting to me. I thank you very much. This is Lorraine.
Melissa agrees completely.
Say, at the risk of sounding pushy, Chris, could you post this wonderful PowerPoint before Friday to the TAC web presence?
Yes, and I owe you the one from last month as well.
I'm asking because on Friday I'm kind of taking the show on the road a little bit, and I'm going to be trying to sweet talk some more schools and at the UT system level, and I'd love to. I'm planning to give them a internet tour of what I'm talking about, and it'd be really nice to have this posted so I can refer to it.
Okay. Yeah, I will do that.
Is it not too late for other universities to join this? Oh, that was a negative question. Is it too late for other universities to join this?
No, it is not.
No. Good. Because I'm going down to Corpus Christi and we'll be meeting with people from the Valley and that area, Kingsville, and I could also try and talk some people down there into doing it too.
Yeah, I don't think that we placed an upper limit on it. Our original goal was 4 universities, 4 community colleges. If we end up with more than that, then I think that's fantastic. Ideally, we would like to get another couple of community colleges, because right now I believe we have 4 universities and 2 community colleges. And so if we end up with more of one than the other, I don't think that that's a problem at all, because it's a learning process and just getting our feet under the ground with how this is going to work moving forward. So I don't think necessarily, we're not trying to do cross-institutional comparisons or anything, that we need to keep those groups the same size or anything.
Well, with Lorraine, I'm sorry, with Lorraine and I both being at universities that get a lot of transfer students, we're going to be measuring those 2-year colleges anyway.
Yeah, I've been working hard on TAMU Corpus Christi, Chris. Any movement with them that you're aware of?
No, I have not.
Larry's been in touch with them. Larry, can you speak to that?
Specifically, what was that, Lorraine?
I said I've been working on TAMU Corpus Christi pretty hard, and I finally got you guys connected, and I'm wondering if you've made any progress with them.
No, I have not. I haven't heard back from them after I sent the email that I sent. I haven't heard a word. I can follow up with that.
I think they'd be really good because David Below told me that he feels like they're ready to do this.
Okay. I'll follow up with it. It may be, too, that those 2 faculty members aren't on campus during summer 1 or something. But I'll check with David and see what he says, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, then I think we are good until we meet again on July 12th. And again, the link's here, and then we'll send out a reminder. And then by all means, if there's things that questions that come up between now and then, I think that last email I sent out had, everybody in that contact list that was listed at the beginning of this presentation materials and stuff could serve as a distribution list for this group for the time being.
Chris, this is Sarah. I just wanted to remind you that I will be out of the office on the 12th. I think Lee will also be out of the office. He can confirm, but I won't be able to attend that webinar.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. We understand there's other commitments, and then some of us actually might get to take a vacation. I'm still trying to figure out if that's going to be a possibility.
It's a vacation.
Not during the summer. It's honestly, like I said earlier, the summer is the busiest time of year for me. It's honestly easier for me if I'm going to take vacation time to take it sometime other than the summer.
Thought maybe my surgery was vacation time.
Well, and that's the thing is too, is I had my own experience with that recently, and that's a sad thing is whenever you're like, oh hey, it's I've got to have this medical procedure done, so I get some time off, I get a vacation from work. That's a really sad state of affairs. So, all right, well then next time, I really appreciate the time, enjoy the conversation, and look forward to hearing you guys through email, and at the very least, we'll talk again on July 12th.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.